I call Paul Foster-Bell.
Tēnā koe e te mana whakawa, tēnā koutou katoa e ngā mema o te whare paramata. Sir, in taking a brief call on the Building Pools Amendment Act first reading, I would like to say this is a very sensible bill. It brings in some much needed reforms in reducing bureaucracy and increasing consistency in the implementation of a regime which provides for the safety of our youngest and most vulnerable citizens. But in doing so, it doesn't compromise the provision of that safety. Sir, this bill isn't a silver bullet to the issue of water safety for young people. We know that of children in New Zealand who tragically drown, 80% are below the age of 2. So by keeping young people away from the source of this risk, we can do much to further increase the safety levels to reduce the risk of that accidental drowning. But I would like to acknowledge that there is a wider issue of water safety in New Zealand, and I'd like to also acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Peseta Sam Lotuenga, who has done so much to advocate for life jackets and water safety, particularly among his people in the Auckland region. But also, I'd like to acknowledge John Morrison, the former Wellington City Council, who's on the board of Water Safety New Zealand and has done an enormous amount to raise money for Wellington Ocean Sports and to training better safety in people who both go out casual boating through to those who might fish off rocks, for instance, or use our coastline for recreational purposes. So there is a wider piece, but this is an important and significant component of the wider water safety issue. So just to give an example I know of, I used to work in the New Zealand Embassy in Tehran, where the Swimming Pool Fencing Act 1987, believe it or not, applied. Or at least we sought to make sure that we adhered to New Zealand safety levels. We had a fence with razor wire around the embassy, but for the purposes of that piece of legislation, the swimming pool itself, which was also our water reservoir for emergency earthquake use, wasn't deemed to be properly fenced. Clearly that was illogical, and so this piece of legislation, where a barrier complies with the Building Act, it will be deemed to be sufficient to keep children out from the swimming pool area. That's very logical. There are currently highly illogical cases where something certainly acts to keep children away from a swimming pool but doesn't meet the definition of a fence. So this modernisation is necessary. The original legislation dates from 1987. There are very few members of this House remaining here who were still around in 1987. So this piece of legislation needs serious updating, sir, and for that reason I'm commending it for further consideration by the excellent Local Government and Environment Select Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.